Hi guys, today we're going to be learning to collect data and display it in a bar graph. And you're going to do this through a fairly active task that you can do in the real world. First of all, you're going to have to decide upon a research question for you to gather data on. Some examples of this might include things like the colours of cars driving along Corby Hill Road or Main Street or Queensferry Road, wherever is close and convenient for you. Another example might be things like the frequency of dice rolls. So you take a dice, you roll it 50 times, and you take a note of the numbers that come up and how often each number comes up. Now there's many more questions that you might choose to investigate, and the more imagination you use, the better it'll be. The next thing that you need to do is draw a frequency table in order to gather your data. Once you've done that, you're going to transfer the information from your frequency table into a bar graph of your own. To start off with then, let's look at frequency tables and examine how they can be used to collect data. So here's a frequency table that I knocked up recently. There is a local farm that I do a little bit of voluntary work on, and the last time I was there, I decided to do a little bit of observation to see how many animals I could observe on my visit. Now, I started off by noting down each of the categories of the animals. And really I should have a title at the top here, saying that that's what this column is depicting. Next, I used a tally system to collect my information. Now you should know already that when we're doing tally marks, we make a total of 4 marks, and then on the 5th mark, we use a diagonal mark to bind all them together. So that makes them easy to count up in groups of 5. Once I'd collected all my data in tally form, at the end of the day, I then filled in the 3rd column, which is the frequency column. So I turn all the tallies into a number. So for instance, I saw 64 sheep, 15 cows, 2 pigs, 3 brown hares, 5 roe deer, 10 pigeons, and 50 corvids. That's things like crows, ravens, rooks, jackdaws, magpies, so on and so forth. Next, I used this frequency table and turned it into a bar graph. So the first thing I had to do when drawing my bar graph was decide upon a scale. The first thing you should always do with a bar graph is think, what is my biggest number and what is my smallest number? And what scale will I have to use in order to show both of those numbers on the same graph? In my case, I decided that I could go up in jumps of 2. So if I'm going up 2 boxes at a time, that would be enough on this page to show the smallest number and the biggest number. However, I figured it was going to look a little bit cramped if I put every single number on 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So I just did numbers in increments of 10. But you can still easily figure out, just using your knowledge of scale, that each smaller increment is a jump of 2. Once I'd drawn my scale, I had to decide on the length of my axes that would fit that scale. I had to label my axes accurately. I drew my graph with the bars all to the correct height, including half boxes in some cases. So the number of cows I saw were 15, so that had to go between 14 and 16. And then lastly, I put in an accurate title to describe what my graph is depicting. So that's the task that you're going to try. To be successful in drawing your graph, once you've collected your data, you have to do a total of 6 things. Firstly, you should select a sensible scale for your graph that shows the biggest number and the smallest number. Next, you should draw axes of the correct length for the scale that you've selected. Thirdly, you should make sure that you're using a ruler for all the lines that you draw. You need to make sure that your axes are labelled appropriately. So not just the numbers and the categories, but you need labels, shown here, to say what these axes are actually showing. Next, you need to make sure that your bars are drawn to the correct height for each value, including half boxes if necessary. And lastly, make sure that you give a detailed title. Cheers, guys!